ladies, welcome to another episode of the Femalepreneur Coach podcast. I am so excited to be speaking with you today all around self-sabotage and how that can show up for you in your relationship with money, and therefore how you can become aware of that and then overcome self-sabotage to actually receive more wealth. I'm super excited to be talking about it today. It's something that I think a lot of people don't realise, that they have these patterns of self-sabotage, and they feel instead very much at the mercy of what is happening to them in relation to their finance. But actually, when you can realise that everything comes from you and that you are essentially the creator of your own economy, your own universe, it's actually very empowering, because you realise then with that radical self-awareness that you can create changes, i.e., you can drastically and radically change your situation financially. So when I realised this, it was a huge game changer for me, because up until that point I felt very disadvantaged when it comes to money. I had a very toxic money story. Obviously I go into a lot more detail in that in one of my other episodes around finding your origin story and identifying the patterns that have you really kept you stuck. They will be stories and things that you saw and heard as a child. So that's your belief system is essentially being formed at those young formative years, typically between the ages of 0 and 7. It's when your brain is most susceptible to whatever it's receiving, and just accepting it as truth. So, I had a very toxic relationship with money, and there's no way that I can get around that. Some parts of my story might be relatable, some might be absolutely just completely unfathomable to you. But I had what I would call a very polarizing upbringing. So some elements of my childhood, I was in a really great financial state, and then other times, I was in extreme poverty and lack, to the point where our house was actually repossessed. And there was a period of time when me and my siblings went into a hostel because we literally had no money. And it wasn't until I was older that I realised that as much as I'd never gone back to that extreme as it relates to money, I'd actually managed to inadvertently recreate those cycles of feast and famine in my own adulthood. So when I was young, I'd worked through sheer will determination, through that push energy, decided for me at a very young age that I was never going to go back to feeling disempowered when it came to money. So the logical part of my brain told me that the only way to really overcome that is by working, and working like a bitch. If I'm honest, I literally worked 3 jobs at most points of my early years, right up until when I was 28 and I had my daughter and I was pregnant, and it became no longer safe for me to be working the hours that I was. But up until that point, I was just doing the damn thing, and I genuinely believed that no one would outwork me. And it's like trying to outrun the devil, It's like, as long as I keep moving, as long as I'm constantly hustling, grinding, doing the thing, even if, unexpected bills popped up or something, I'm always going to be in control of what happens to me, because I am working so hard and so much. And I look back now and it was just ridiculous, but this was, I'm trying to think. So even when I was doing my exams at school at 15, 16 years old, I already had a full-time job practically, and I remember it was in a bakery, because it's one of the only places that would employ you at such a young age. And the guy that owned the business literally picked me up from my home at 5 a.m, dropped me to work. I did a few hours, set everything up, popped out to do my exams at school. He drove me and was waiting outside, picked me up, and I went back to work for the rest of the day. And it was like, yeah, keep it moving. Now, obviously that was a pattern of self-sabotage, because obviously, I should have really given myself the best time and space to really kind of allow myself to consolidate that event, which was my exams. I actually did pretty well, so it was okay. It all worked out in the end. I didn't compromise my education for money, but who knows what else I would have been capable of if I wasn't working so hard and I wasn't so distracted by my immediate needs to be safe and to have money. It really makes me sad at times, because it's that sense of lost childhood, And I definitely think that I lost years of my life where I just fell naturally into, I didn't even go to college, didn't go to university until I was 25, and I actually paid for it myself. And I graduated from my master's degree 6 months pregnant with my second child. And again, so much adversity and challenge around even being able to finish that degree. It was insane. It's like, for me, I had very much created the narrative that life was meant to be hard. And if you really wanted something enough, you know, despite all the challenges that came your way, like, you'd find a way, you know. And it was almost like I would look at other people that were seemingly having life easy and being like, you're missing out, because while life is easy and life is good, you're not really understanding and you're not being tested to see what you're capable of. And I just used to wear that with pride about the amount of resilience that I had, the amount of shit that I could take, you know, like, what? Like, what? But that was my narrative of life. Like, that is what I thought it was meant to be. It was like, fortune favours the women that could just take the most crap. Like, really? Obviously now things are very, very different, but I do wonder if I'd had that chance to go to university, kind of explore my sense of self and not just being thrown into adulthood and commitments and responsibilities at such a young age, if my life would have taken a different path, and I wouldn't have wasted so much time in my 20s doing what I thought was the right thing, you know, pursuing a corporate career, which, as much as there were elements that I loved, didn't really light me up and didn't really play to my personality strengths. You know, I'm too much of an empath to work in HR, which is what I did. And, you know, parts of my personality where I was very, you know, very focused on the individual and really delivering a great service and trying to make people happy and nurture talent and all of those things. As much as, yes, HR is a great conduit for that as a job, it really isn't, because ultimately, you know, your loyalty lies with the business and not the individual. I don't know why I thought that was a good move for me, but obviously that's just what made sense to me at the time. Coaching, obviously, since, is literally like the icing on the cake, because I get to do all of the things that I love to do in HR, but it is all about the individual. It is all about creating your own path. So essentially how this then presented this pattern of just working like a crazy person, the reality is you can only sustain that for so long before something gives. And I didn't necessarily, well, how it kind of manifested for me was that there was, you know, in my early 20s, I had created a massive property portfolio worth over £1 million, which obviously 20 years ago was a big deal. Nowadays, probably not so much. Like, you could probably spend 1 million on one house. You know, I know my house is certainly bordering that right now. So, you know, but at that time it was, and it was completely self-led. And it's like, I'd got to what I thought was the dream, and it's like, finally I've got my happy ending. But self-sabotage kicked in. And when my relationship crumbled, which it inevitably did in my early 20s, because I'd amassed that property portfolio with a partner, for me, the fear, guilt, shame around not being liked, wanting to be a good person, not seeming to be taking things that I didn't deserve, meant that I essentially walked away from 99% of that property. I literally just took a small amount of money that gave me a deposit to buy my own home, which was in an area that I didn't want to live in, that was completely overpriced, that was in a house I didn't want to live in, but I bought it with a friend, and I was so worried about her not wanting to live with me that I I don't know. I need to know what this word is. I am so rubbish. Anybody that listens to my podcast will know that I kind of make up words because I can't understand how you then translate it. But essentially, I put her needs before mine because my self-esteem was so low, and the thought of her wanting to be my friend and live in this house with me on her own merits was completely unfathomable to me. My level of self-worth was so low that, again, she didn't put any money into this house. I paid for everything, literally the furniture, the legal fees, the deposit. It's like I was bribing this poor girl to be my friend. I couldn't have made it any easier because I didn't want to be alone. So obviously then, again, self-sabotage, because, you know, that could have been a very astute business move, and I could have made it equitable for both of us, but I overcompensated so much that I ended up, you know, massively losing out on money essentially for myself, because I didn't want to be seen to be ruthless, and because I didn't think that anybody, if I wasn't paying them, would want to be around me. How this then translated into my entrepreneurial journey was exactly the same. And I've just kind of made a little connection as I've been talking, that it was around that self-worth and paying people to be around me. I recognised from a very young age that people are only nice to you if you have money. And this is essentially, like, full disclosure, like, I've never spoken about this before, but this is where these podcast episodes go when you get into flow, and I love it. So when I was a child, I had a stepdad. Now, I won't go into too much detail about him because he's still with us in the spiritual world, in the physical world. But reading between the lines, he was not a very nice guy to me or my sister or my mum. So, however, when my dad passed when I was 4, I was left an inheritance that essentially, and do you know what, I don't even think it was that much money looking on it now, but when people spoke about it at the time, it was like I'd won the lottery, you know. And my sister had money as well, and that didn't even come from a life insurance policy or my dad. What had happened was he died in the Navy when he was in active duty, and the men that he'd been, I'm getting emotional because it's just such a beautiful story, but essentially the men that were on the ship with him, because he was based out in Barbados at the time, and he'd been away for a while, all of the men on the ship were obviously concerned about me and my sister and my mum, because when you're not in the Navy anymore, you're not in the Navy, you know. Literally, we were evicted from our home within weeks of my dad passing because you're not in the Navy. So it's kind of like fair enough. But for us, as much as my mum received like a little inheritance, I don't know, she's not here, but I'm assuming that she must have done, because obviously we owned our house at one point. So I think that's where that came from. But they recognised that obviously for me and my sister that was still very young, you know, there was no one really there to provide for us going forwards. So what they did was actually did a really beautiful charity, like what would now be like a GoFundMe page, but they collectively raised money for me and my sister and put it into trust. Side note, and for anybody that's watching, listening from the UK, Ian Botham was a really famous cricketer in that like 80s era, and he actually donated like some signed stuff for me and my sister so that they could raise more money. And it just warms my heart that there's such kind people out there in the world. But essentially, what I realised from a young age was that my stepdad was toxic, he was vile, he was nasty, he was abusive, he was all the things, until he wanted money. So unbeknownst to my nan and my other family members, my stepdad, my mum, actually had access to this money. I think it was like a post office account, you know. This is so dated, and I'm pretty sure it would never happen in today's times. But essentially, they could get me as a child to go to the post office counter with my little book and withdraw money, because it was in my name. So as long as they signed off on it as parents and, you know, responsible adults, it was okay. So several times, you know, the only time he was nice to me was when he wanted money, and they would take hundreds of pounds. Well, not my mum never did. And I don't even know if she was aware of it now, looking back. We never had that conversation. But I certainly remember my stepdad, like, frog marching me to the post office and taking out hundreds of pounds in a go. And I've got one famous story, actually, where I had a school trip that I was due to go on, which was skiing. And I've got in my head the number £700. I don't know if that was actually the amount, because to me that's ludicrous, but it could have been. But that's how I remember it, and this is why our memories are so subjective, by the way. So I'm always like trying to kind of consolidate what it is that I'm remembering. But essentially, I remember going to the post office and about to go to school and pay for this school trip, and him saying to me, "You can't possibly take £700 in cash into school. Like, you're only small. It's not safe. I'll write you a cheque." And then getting to the morning where I'm about to go into school, pay for my school trip, and him being like, "Oh, no, hang on a sec, don't take that cheque. Just give me a minute. Like, if they cash it, it will bounce." And I remember doing this 3 times, where I had taken the money out, he had put it in his bank, and it had gone somewhere else, and just being told like several times, don't take that cheque to school. And I never went on the school trip, like, ever. It just never materialised. So I ended up paying for it 3 times and never going. So for me, the lasting core memory was around being liked, and people are only nice to you if you have money, because all the other time he was hateful. But when he wanted something, he was suddenly, everything was like, oh, let me look after you, you can't possibly carry around that cash, that I worry about you, da, 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 da. So suddenly I'd elicited some sort of niceness from this guy who was kind of beyond any element of niceness. So how that had then translated into my adult years, and literally as I'm talking, I'm connecting the dots even more so. But when I then became an entrepreneur and bought my business, literally it felt so uncomfortable to make so much money and be surrounded with people that didn't necessarily have money, you know, because my staff they were paid really, really well, actually, much better than industry standards. Didn't know. But in an attempt to be liked, to try and compensate for the fact that I didn't really know what I was doing, in the attempt to create a really great culture in my business and to really get people aligned with the mission and the values, I was massively overpaying for my staff. I had friends that came in to work for me. You want a job? Come see me. Yep, that's fine. Every time, I paid for my tax. My accountant actually had to come and say to me, Rebecca, stop buying coffee for your staff. You've gone way above the threshold of what is considered to be gratuitous. You literally need to stop buying your staff coffee. And also what I realised was nobody ever bought me a coffee. You know, it's I realised at one point, I sat back and thought, I've made it so easy. I paid everybody a day rate instead of working on commission, which is kind of industry terms, because I didn't want anybody to be in a fearful state and know that they were appreciated and valued. And actually they took the absolute piss out of me. They were earning hundreds of pounds worth of day rates, and they had no incentive, no fucks at all around whether I made money or my kids ate or any of those sorts of things. They were literally there because I'd made it so bloody easy. And what I'd done from this desperate, needy push energy is I'd attracted a load of people who were using me, essentially. And when I look back, I paid for things like friends' holidays. I've got one friend that I'm no longer friends with, but literally I paid for her to go to Thailand, I paid for her to go to Mexico, I paid for her to go to Brazil, Spain, holidays with my kids when I was a single parent, New York. Literally I was throwing money at this girl and saying, just love me, just be my friend. And every time she was like, okay. And do I think she was a bad person? No, because I know that I was making it so oh babe, it's fine, don't even worry, I've got the money, don't worry about it, it's not a problem, I'd love to do it. But she was like, okay. And I guess in her mind she'd reconciled that was okay. And I paid for countless trips, Tenerife and all the things. And it was only, I guess, having children and really going through some emotional stuff where my friendship circle fell away. Anyway, I think pre-COVID actually was really interesting for a lot of us to take a moment to reflect on those self-sabotaging behaviours and patterns that kind of got us up to that point. And that for me was quite confronting, suddenly having nothing and no one, and nothing but time on my hands really was my deep dive, I think, for a lot of us into just kind of reassessing, recalibrating my life, where I want to go into the next phase. And I'm certainly much more discerning when it comes to who I spend time with, who I spend my energy with, where I spend my money. But again, I've been guilty of self-sabotaging behaviours where I've overinvested in coaches that I believed are going to, just being associated with them is going to give me some element of credibility. Just being in their presence and their energy is going to make me a better person by osmosis or something, But actually, I've attracted, again, the wrong coaches that weren't in it for the right reasons, that weren't really necessarily interested in me. And it's just instead fulfilling that constant need to be validated by others. So that's been quite interesting. And I'm actually currently in a process of just pausing all of my commitments as it relates to coaching and mentoring. And is that because I don't believe in it? Absolutely not. I believe in it more than ever. I believe every woman should have a coach or a mentor to support them through life. But it may look different at different stages. So for me now, I'm focusing on different areas that need healing, that need, if I need a strategy, I'm going to go to somebody who's specifically an expert in that strategy. One of the things that I want to do more of this year is speaking, so I'm going to be working with a speaking coach. You know, it's just about getting those tangible outcomes for me now. Whereas, you know, if I can find the right person that can support me holistically, business, mind, soul, strategy, like I do for my clients, then absolutely I'll be there as well, because I don't negate the value of being supported. Absolutely, particularly when if you're in a service-based business, or where you're giving your energy out, which is inevitably for most of us, even if you're just parents, like, you're giving out your energy. Even if you're an active member of your community, or you know, a leader in some way to somebody, you're giving out your energy, you deserve to receive it too. So that's also been super important for me. But it may be also, there's been times in my business where I've been guilty of not investing at all, and holding back and playing small and focusing on saving money rather than focusing on bringing more money in, and being in like conservation mode, safety mode, scarcity mode. So I'd love for you today to reflect on some of those patterns for yourself. You know, this is me kind of bearing my soul as to how I've toxically recreated self-sabotaging patterns and behaviours that relate to, not only to money, but also to my own self-worth, because ultimately I am a money mindset coach because of what it symbolises for me. It isn't just about a number on a page. Money is never just money to me. Because ultimately what you are comfortable in receiving in terms of money and wealth is a direct correlation to what you think you are worth. So a lot of women come to me. I've actually got clients that I just do life coaching with. They don't even have a business, and that's not really widely known. But for me, my obsession is around the mind and why women do what they do. And I have always seen the direct line between money, empowerment, freedom, and all of the things that money represents, and the conduit of receiving that money, which is business. So I've always just kind of married the two. But equally, I'm a mindset coach at heart. You know, I'm a money mindset coach at heart. That's part of my bigger mission in life. So the reason that I wanted to share this with you today is because, again, I see so many women going through these patterns of self-sabotage. Every client that comes to me, that's one of the first things that we do, is really look at the patterns around money that they've had. And it's no secret to me that 70% of lottery winners typically lose their money. It's because they felt so uncomfortable, so unworthy, and so unused to the amount of money that they were receiving, that their first instinct has been to sabotage it. So I want to break this down so that you can go away and take some practical steps from today's episode, so that you can go away and identify the patterns for yourself, because we all have them. We absolutely, there is nobody that escapes any money blocks or any self-sabotaging behaviours as it relates to money, because it's fear of the unknown. Ultimately, that's where it comes from. Self-sabotage creeps in when we are about to hit either when something in our environment triggers a warning in our brain that something is not safe. So for me, it would have been, if I don't spend money on everybody around me, if I become too above my station or deemed to be part of the other half, I'm going to lose the community that I've got in my family and my tribe, because they're so used to that lack money mindset and being broke and on the treadmill of working 24/7 and living for their weekends and never really having enough money, never really aspiring to have enough money because it's so far out of what they're used to, just very much resigned to the fact that you just eat, sleep, work, repeat. That if I don't fall into that same pattern and trap of the feast and famine cycles, there's only so far I can go before suddenly I don't belong to these people anymore. I'm not recognizable to them as part of my tribe, and I will be alone. And that was ultimately my self-sabotaging behavior. You know, I would only ever let myself get to a certain amount of success, and then I would kind of start to panic because, you know, and it could be that some of these self-sabotaging fears are things like, are very real, like tax bills. You know, that felt quite intimidating to me when I registered to receive like VAT and have to pay that bill. It was like, oh my God, now I'm a grown up. Now the repercussions of my business, it's gone from just a fun thing to, God, if I don't get this right, people go to prison. You know, people go to prison if they don't pay their tax bills and their VAT. And then where would my kids be? You know, am I really a grown up enough for this business? Am I really sensible enough? Am I really worthy? You know, it was all of these things. And because I was very much, it was a 7-day-a-week business, the staff, it was a very intimate, like they were long days, I was in there most days, you know, with my kids as well. It felt very personal. That interaction felt very personal. I could feel the fucking energy in the room if somebody had been talking about me prior. I had a business partner at the time, which was an ex-partner. He was just sabotaging in a different way, in that he was everybody's friend. He was everybody's, like, it was almost like them and me, you know? It was like the them and us type thing, where I was the bad guy. He would constantly use me to make people hate me. It'd be like, well, I'd love to pay you more money, but Rebecca says you can't. And I'd come in, and then I'd have these like angry people that had been winding themselves up all day, ready to literally like confront me on the doorstep of the shop with my kids in pushchairs and be like, what the fuck? Why can't I have more money? And I'd be like, what? Like, so obviously there were so many issues around the boundaries that I had, that my staff felt it was okay to talk to me, but I was constantly being undermined by my business partner, who had set this precedent that, you know, everybody was friends, and it was super relaxed, and it was okay to talk to me that way. Like, he did not care about me at all, like zero respect. He didn't care about the profitability of the business, because all he could see was cash in his hands, so he'd constantly be using the cash in the till. And then it would come to like the bills, and it would be like, well, I guess that has to come out of my money, because, you know, I've got to make sure that this doesn't go to shit. He doesn't care if we pay taxes. He doesn't care if, you know, my kids eat, or all of the needs are taken care of, and the business he doesn't care if he has bad credit. Like, you know, so, but equally, how did I attract like somebody like that as a business partner? Because I was looking for validation from other people that seemed to be more confident than me, that seemed to not give a fuck, you know, that seemed to be that version of me that I wanted to be, and not in all of the things, don't get me wrong, the elements of his personality, which was literally like, I don't care what people say. I mean, that was a complete bravado. He absolutely did care, and he's crippled by anxiety about what people think about him. Side note, most men that pretend and have that toxic masculinity, it comes from a place of fear and lack of self-worth. I didn't know that at the time. So I was kind of drawn to that alpha state because it represented safety for me at the time, because that's what I had been used to growing up. You know, I had a toxic alpha male that would think nothing about, you know, hitting kids and all of the things, and that's what I was used to. So it was familiar. Our brains will always try and get us back to a state of familiar, and even though consciously we might want more money and a better life for our kids, if actually what we're used to and what has been shown up for us time and time again is struggle and lack, at least it's better the devil you know. You know, that's essentially what your brain is looking for. It's looking for familiarity. It's looking for homeostasis. Even toxic cycles in a relationship, you know what you're getting. You know, like your brain is happy with an outcome that is inevitable. That's where it feels safe, and that's where a lot of women don't understand why this work is so important, because they just think that they can say positive affirmations and just surround themselves with great people, and automatically their life is going to get great. And actually the deep dive work that needs to happen to really take control of your finances and be truly empowered, it's ugly, it's dirty, it's confronting, it feels really exhausting, it brings up so much crap that, again, people can avoid it for that reason, but it is so powerful when you get to the other side of it, because then truly nobody else can hurt you. You know, when you reclaim your power and have in your hands all of the tools that you need in order to recognize those self-sabotaging patterns of behavior and move through them, that's when you're truly, because they're never going to stop coming. That's the reality. You're never done when it comes to money mindset, because there will always be new circumstances, new situations, new levels of income that are going to test you at a new level. This is why it is an ongoing commitment, and it's why, like I said, just even having this conversation out loud and trying to relay some of the obvious patterns of my story have meant that I've just connected the dot on something else that I wasn't even consciously aware of, because, you know, 95% of our thoughts are unconscious. So it's only, you know, how do we prioritize what comes to the surface so that we can deal with it? It's by doing the work and refocusing our brain around what it is, our goals, our desires, what is safe, like all of these things. So what I want for you to do today is take away these 5 steps, which are essentially the processes that you can start embodying and implementing into your daily, weekly, monthly practices that are going to help you to stop self-sabotage in its tracks. Because it's going to come, but it's about not allowing it to take hold and derail you and keep you from your next level of happiness and success. So the first thing is obviously around radical self-awareness. This is where you really need to start calling yourself out on your own BS and becoming the witness, but a gentle observer, by the way, not a bitch. Like, let's not make it any harder for ourselves. Don't be mean to yourself, but it's about becoming the gentle observer of your thoughts and patterns and stopping them in their tracks. If you are starting to say something and you realise, out of my mouth, I have literally, that's not even me, that's something my mum used to say. You know, that belief doesn't even belong to me. Why am I saying that? I don't believe that. Or if you can see yourself falling into that collective herd mindset where you're engaging in conversations that are really disempowering about money. Could be petrol prices, could be, I don't know, could be anything, you know, cost of living, all of these things. If you see catch yourself in the moment, like just naturally falling into that pattern of joining in with those conversations, stop yourself in the tracks and be like, why am I engaging in this? Is this adding anything to my life? Absolutely not. Is it making me feel worse? Yeah. So what am I doing? This isn't helping me. This isn't empowering me. And become aware. Like I say, become the gentle observer of those thoughts, patterns and beliefs. And one way that you can do this is by timelining your relationship with money. And this is where you need to take it right back to like early childhood, like I did, and understand that those patterns were set for you probably before you were even born. Some of our thoughts, beliefs, patterns are from like when we were in the womb, you know, and past lives. So timeline, what has been your reality and your experience around money right back from early childhood, and can you see any cycles or patterns? Because for me it was very clear. Every time I've got to a great high, it's been followed by a massive low, and then I will gradually, like by sheer will, grit, determination and graft, get back up there, because I had the narrative that everything had to be done the hard way because life is shit and I have been dealt the hard cards. You know, I've got to work harder than everybody else in the room to be deserving and to have some elements of comfort with what I was receiving. And then I would get to a certain point and then I would start to sabotage it. Even if I didn't sabotage it, other people did. And then again, I'm back on slowly building now my business back up again after a really traumatic 2 years personally, where again I reached that high, complete low, and I'm now back on the way up, which feels really great. So, but now I will never let it go beyond that point. This now gets to be my new normal. And the next thing is to identify, what is it actually costing you right now to stay stuck, to be in that disempowered state and to not move forwards? Because at the moment your brain will literally be making you feel scared. You know, it will be stopping you from increasing your prices. It will be stopping you from working with your next level client. It will be keeping you stuck, procrastination. It will be making things feel hard. So, but you have to decide, because there's a huge power in deciding that you are ready for something else, that you are ready for that next level, and it's okay. And the good far outweighs the bad. Yes, you may get some judgment. Yes, you may get some hateful comments online if you become more visible. Yes, you may get clients that want refunds. Yes, you might not be able to service your clients at the intimate level that you would love to, but equally, who really wins in that situation anyway if you're playing small, you know? The next thing is around, well, the last thing actually, the next thing is around writing down all of the negative consequences of you being successful. Because like I say, you might think, oh, well, there's none. Everything will be perfect. My life will be amazing. But inevitably, there will be some negative outcomes like I just described. You know, you might have to pay more taxes. Your business might become an actual business rather than a hobby or a side hustle. You know, you might get more visible and people might not like you. You might have to pull away from your tribe and your family because they suddenly aren't in alignment with you anymore. And that's okay. People might say that you're a bitch. That's okay. Because you deserve to have that next level experience of life, which is true financial independence and living life on your own terms. It's saying yes to things rather than no because you can't afford it. You know, it's about being able to follow those passions and dreams without the fear of money holding you back. And then finally, how can you make it safe for yourself and your unconscious part of your brain to accept that next level of wealth and allow you to receive it? So it could be speaking to your subconscious brain at its most relaxed and perceptible state through hypnosis audios. It's one of the reasons why I'm a hypnotherapist, because I understand the power of that. I've got an incredible series of hypnosis audios, which is called my Wealth Activation System. I'll pop it in the show notes. You can get that. It's completely free. There's 3 there that will help you with that, unpicking some of those unconscious beliefs. It could be through daily repetition, such as affirmations, reading, podcasts, and just instead of engaging in those negative, disempowering conversations, moving to the table where women are having more empowering conversations. It's why every element of my business has a community container, because it is so important to surround yourself with the right people. You know, 7-Figure Sisterhood Mastermind and the Aligned, Empowered and Abundant Academy, which will be launching soon. If you want any of those details, feel free to reach out. That could be a really symbolic act today that you take to say that you are ready for that next level, is by being in the room and in a container and being held by women who are ready for that next level. That will truly show you what's possible for you and make it safe for you to receive. It could be by looking for evidence, you know, online. Everybody told me I'm a single mom with 5 kids, you know, you should just sit down and wait your turn, wait until the kids are older. But I looked around and thought, there's women every day just doing the damn thing. Why the hell am I any different? If they can be successful, so can I. So that is what I needed to do at that point, was find evidence that it was possible for me too. And then finally, it's about acclimatizing to those next levels of income. And this could be through incremental upgrades, such as, you know, investing in a mentor. It could be investing in better underwear, removing scarcity signals. If you've got a cupboard drawer that is driving you mad and every day it pisses you off, get it fixed. You know, the cost versus the energy, you know, that it takes to deal with that inconvenience every day is going to pay for itself. You know, so, and it's catching yourself in those moments. So I hope that you found this episode super useful. It's a little bit longer than I intended, but hopefully you have got so much value from it. I hope you have a fantastic day, and let me know in the comments what your key takeaway is. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with anybody that you think needs this help at the moment as well.